Tuesday. It's Greg Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out with me. People piling into the chat room. Even though I started late, David till Valhalla, JL, John, Ed, Joe, Randy, James, and more. Thank you so much for being here. And really do appreciate people reaching out saying, hey, missed you. And got a really sweet email from one listener. So appreciate that, guys. Back at it. And I'll have to tell you later on this week where I went for a few days enjoying some time away. But we got a jam-packed week this week. The state legislature's back in session today. The Legislative Audit Commission starts at 9:30 this morning. They're going to be delving into a variety of things. And then you've got deadlines for the House to pass Senate bills out of committee and the Senate to pass House bills out of committee. So that deadline is Friday for both chambers. So you're going to see a lot of legislation flying all over the place. We'll do what we can to track that for you. A little bit later on, we'll talk about what's going on up in Chicago, especially with Officer Herrera's memorial services and politicians not being invited. Governor J.B. Pritzker being asked about that yesterday. We also talked with William Kelly, a reporter out of Chicago, about that and continued concerns over what's going on with crime. But next up, let's talk about the latest filings in the U.S. Supreme Court when it deals with challenges against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. So we'll tackle that next here with Bishop on Air. Several filings to the U.S. Supreme Court and challenges to Illinois' gun and magazine ban, and they come from the Second Amendment Foundation, and it's not the Barnett case that is currently in the Southern District of Illinois, consolidated with several other cases. Now you've got a couple of other challenges that were pushed to the U.S. Supreme Court to have them consider, and those are having some more filings there. So follow along with us. It's Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Thanks for hanging out with me. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we break down stuff happening in and around Illinois. But let's go ahead and jump into some of the latest from last week in the U.S. Supreme Court filings. Let's look at the U.S. Supreme Court docket page for the Barnett case, where you have, of course, it was filed February 12th, and we've reviewed all of the other filings here, even up to the 15th of this month, where Cook County responded, the state of Illinois responded, but you also had others that responded in amicus briefs, like the Sheriff's Association. So no movements there on that case yet. But if you look at some of the other cases where Attorney General Kwame Raoul is the defendant, in particular Javier Herrera's case and also Dane Harrell's case, these are just two other cases that the U.S. Supreme Court has been asked to take up. And let's look at the Herrera case real quick here. That was filed also for cert February 12th. And this is the guy from Chicago and Cook County who was challenging Cook County's ban. And ultimately, that case in the Northern District, the judge said that the state had and the Cook County has a likelihood of succeeding on the merits. But we have a reply that was submitted last week in this case. And let's go ahead and pull this up. where it's in the U.S. Supreme Court on petition for writ. Let's see where we get here. The Seventh Circuit defied the court's precedents on a question of exceptional importance. The absence of decisions faithfully applying Bruin highlights the need for review, and no vehicle issue stands in the way of this court's review. So a brief filing here. It's only 19 pages, a lot of citing that's going on, but respondents' opposition confirms that the Second Amendment will remain a second-class right, and this is according to the reply, unless this court intervenes. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. Dr. Herrera seeks to keep his common semi-automatic rifle and magazines in his home. Respondents prohibit him from doing so, even though this court has already held that states cannot categorically ban commonly owned arms in the home. District of Columbia versus Heller. As a result, he can't use his rifle for SWAT training, endangering himself and his team. Respondents do not dispute that they must justify their bans under this court's text and history approach, but they join the Seventh Circuit in rewriting the standard. On plain text, the reply in the Herrera case says, all firearms are arms, and they cite Heller. But respondents insist that Dr. Herrera's common semi-automatic firearms are not arms at all because they deem them too much like military-grade weaponry. So you can go through and read more of this and really just go and search the U.S. Supreme Court's docket page for Javier Herrera. And if you're not familiar with that case, it really stems from this doctor who helps with responding to SWAT calls, and he wants some own protection and has semi-automatic firearms. But in the states of Illinois, in Cook County, in Chicago, he could not even keep those firearms in his residence, so he had to store them, and he sued. Regardless of how you feel that particular lawsuit was written and delivered, the Northern District of Illinois federal judge sided with the government, saying that they had a likelihood of success on the merits there. So Javier Herrera looking to get his case called up in the U.S. Supreme Court. But you also have the Dane Harrell case, and this is part of the 4 different plaintiffs' lawsuits in the Southern District of Illinois, where Judge Stephen McGlynn, he has the case moving forward on the merits, and some deadlines coming up in just about 2 weeks, where you've got another status hearing that's set, and filings on what kinds of experts the various litigants are going to call during a trial on the merits. And I think this is important, again, just to reiterate. So far, things have moved on preliminary bases and moving forward, including all the way up to the Seventh Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. And that preliminary basis of the rulings ultimately have the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals saying that the state has a likelihood of succeeding on the merits. But we have yet to get to the merits, those merits being dealt with in the Southern District of Illinois Federal Court, with a trial that's expected sometime in July. But you have the Barnett case, that's like the umbrella for these 4 consolidated cases all lumped together. The Harrell case is part of that as well. And if you look at the docket for the U.S. Supreme Court, you'll see the Harrell case there, filed February 12th, as we saw all these other cases being filed. But then you have April 26th, a reply on Dane Harrell. And if you look at this document, here we've got the filing, petition for writ. This is coming from David Siegel and various other attorneys. And you have it filed here with some of the overview. The Seventh Circuit's decision conflicts with Bruin and Heller. This court should grant cert to make clear that history permits only dangerous and unusual weapons to be banned. And I think that's important there. Dangerous and unusual. I mean, by virtue of a firearm is dangerous, but is it unusual? I think that's an interesting debate that is definitely being had. But the opposition demonstrates the need for certs to settle this issue. This issue is fully developed, and decision below is representative of a growing body of decisions that conflict with the U.S. Supreme Court's precedent. These issues can be resolved in an interlocutory posture. So what that means is interlocutory means kind of, the case is still proceeding, for instance, down in the Southern District, on the merits, and people are asking for the Supreme Court to intervene, interlocutory, to before the full case is fully developed with the merits. People want the U.S. Supreme Court to come in the middle of it and to challenge this. So going through this just briefly here, and again, it's a 16-page filing in the Harrell case. But some of the reply brief, and you'll probably hear some of the similar themes in the Herrera case. But respondents' briefs leave no doubt that the issue in this case is deserving cert. Respondents pile on the Seventh Circuit's ill-conceived opinion additional and typical arguments that fundamentally misunderstand how the dangerous and unusual test laid out in the District of Columbia v. Heller case works within the framework made explicit in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin case. Though respondents urge that there are other similar cases pending below and that this court should delay consideration, in respondents' view, indefinitely, to let those cases play out, in fact, the opposite's true. Delay is likely only to permit existing errors to entrench themselves, and interest balance did before Bruin in circuits around this country. To avoid history repeating itself, this court should grant cert. So then it goes into the Seventh Circuit's decision conflicting with Bruin and Heller. And again, you can read all of this as well. Just go to the U.S. Supreme Court's website and search. If you search Raul, you'll be able to find the Barnett case, the Harrell case, and the Herrera case, all of which are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene before the case is fully dealt with. At least the Barnett and the Harrell case is fully dealt with by the Southern District of Illinois federal judge Stephen McGlynn, who's handling that on the merits. So some interesting stuff happening late last week with those filings to the U.S. Supreme Court asking that they intervene while you've got that Southern District case playing out. So hopefully you're staying up to date there and getting the latest. With Bishop on Air, greatly appreciate you guys being here. A lot of comments in the live chat, so thumbs up there. Thank you for taking the time with us, as always, each and every weekday. So like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, all right? Make it happen. Well, an absolutely tragic shooting in Charlotte where 4 law officers were killed while serving a warrant. That's some of the news that you're seeing in North Carolina, and just brings up even more frustration for those who want some kind of law and order. But when you see stories of police officers being shot and killed, it can really make you want to focus more on that issue of bringing about law and order. But that's a developing story, of course, in North Carolina. But you also had several weeks ago a Chicago police officer shot and killed. And that officer, Herrera, had a funeral service yesterday. And if you follow Mark Weiermuller on X, you can see that he had some of the video of Luis Huska, I should say. I'm sorry, I mispronounced the name there, identified, but Luis Huska having a memorial service and having the support of law enforcement there and law enforcement families, and something I think is important to see and recognize. But what was fascinating is you had the law enforcement community there and the families there supporting, but the family of the fallen officer, Huska, said they don't want Brandon Johnson there. They don't want J.B. Pritzker there. And even Comptroller Susana Mendoza posting this on X yesterday, saying, last night at Officer Huska's visitation. His grief-stricken mother asked Representative Angelica Cuellar and me to please tell Chicago Mayor that he was unwelcome at her son's funeral. We both called him before 10 p.m. asking he please honor her wishes, but this went out at 10:35 a few days ago, which included going to the location of the event. But apparently a change of heart there, and he did not show up. Governor J.B. Pritzker asked about this yesterday as well. Here's what he had to say.
Listen, I get invited to and have attended unfortunately, a lot of funerals of. It is really up to the family whether they want the attention that comes with and all of the hullabaloo that comes with public officials attending. So I always follow the request of the family to do whatever it is that makes them most comfortable.
They even referenced, they said, and not necessarily you per se, but politicians in the state, they felt as if the laws did not protect the police. And others have noted what you said in your statement. You did not call it a murder, you called it his passing. Was that deliberate by not saying he was murdered?
No, listen, we understand, I understand that this was a murder. This was...
To make sure that it's clear law enforcement has support of the community. But the family saying no, they don't want J.B. Pritzker there. They don't want Brandon Johnson there as Officer Luis Huesca is being honored after being shot and killed by a suspect who, he was just on his way home after work. He was even in his police uniform. And some of the other headlines are they have recovered the firearm. They have the suspect named, but obviously there'll be developments in all of that. I chatted with William Kelly this morning, Chicago reporter, and talked a bit about the sentiment of these families saying, no, they don't want these politicians there.
Well, that chapel looks familiar for a couple of reasons. One, I graduated from that high school, and two, there have been way too many police officer funerals held in that chapel. And as somebody who was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, who loves Chicago, who was raised to believe that the mayor of Chicago is the most important job in the world, it really blows my mind, not only as a reporter, but as a Chicagoan, that the mayor of Chicago wasn't at the funeral. There's something seriously wrong here, Greg. The mayor should be there as a public servant, shaking hands not only of the family, but of every person entering and exiting that chapel. So clearly there's something wrong with the leadership in the city of Chicago. There's a lack of understanding of what the job is, from what I'm hearing, obviously from the family and from other officers. And that does not bode well for the summer shooting season, as it's, I guess, grimly referred to in the city of Chicago, Greg.
So William Kelly also noting that even the various other officials that were planning on going to the funeral were asked not to attend, including the COPA chief, Andrea Kirsten. So clearly there's a lot of frustration with the slain officer's family, and it's not the only one in the history of slain officers we've seen recently in Chicago. Frustrated with the leadership there. But William Kelly also grabbing some video over the weekend that's gone viral, 2 million views or so, and it's of what looks like a preview of some activities for this summer in downtown Chicago.
Just got a reporter sense that there was something happening and just went ahead and pressed record, and sure enough, the video that we posted got we're going to break 2 million views at some point today. It's on my Twitter feed. The reason why this is relevant is people, I think, were hoping that the episodes like this were behind us, that this was 2020, that this was George Floyd, that this was BLM, or this was Lori Lightfoot, or something that was behind us. It's obviously not only is it not behind us, it is essentially what we call any day of the week that has nice weather is what it is now. And what makes it specifically, what I think the combination that made that video go viral was the fact that Kim Foxx, the Cook County State's attorney, said that she's going to prosecute free speech protesters at the DNC, the Democrat National Convention, coming to Chicago in August, but she's clearly not prosecuting any violent criminals, armed robbers, smash and grab, looters, that were on that video before, during, and after I pressed record. So this is a problem, an ongoing problem for Chicagoans, and it's obviously spreading into the suburbs and the Collier counties now. But it's clearly going to be a major problem when the DNC comes to town, with people who are protesting things that are happening in the Middle East, when we have people who are just coming from outside of Chicago. And all of our police resources are focusing on protecting the DNC gala guests and leaving the neighborhoods exposed to further looting and smash and grabs, Greg.
So appreciate William Kelly taking the time with us to share that video and give us some of the sentiments on the ground there in Chicago. It is Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out, and be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, all right? Back at it another full week, and plenty for us to tackle here with Bishop on Air. All right, guys, I got to get out of here, head to the Capitol. We'll talk tomorrow, so like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Try to get an earlier start to the day tomorrow. Appreciate you guys.
Recover